பாரதி ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாமா பாரதி? Can we start?
Okay, Walter.
Uma ma'am,
Yeah, yes.
shall we start?
Yeah, we can start.
Nivedita-san? I kindly request Nivedita ma'am to give the intro. Ma'am, your audio and video are disabled. Kindly enable your audio and video. Nivedita ma'am. Just a minute, ma'am, we'll be back.
Yeah, no problem. Sure.
I think she's having some connectivity.
Camera should be on. Now you talk. No, wait. No, she lost the connection. You ask now whether you are.
You come there. Yes, ma'am will give the intro now.
camera, no? Hello, good morning to all. Ohayou gozaimasu. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome you all to the second International RSRI conference. I would like to extend warm welcome to Mrs. Uma Balu, who will give us an introductory address. We are indeed grateful, ma'am, for your presence. Mrs. Uma Balu is a Japanese language, cultural and professional trainer. She is an entrepreneur and founder of Sahara Asia and the director secretary of Bodhidharma Dojo Foundation. She also worked in L&T Infotech and Language Labs. Mrs. Uma Balu has designed language programs for corporate groups. Furthermore, she has also translated the book Chinese classic Dream of Red Mansions into Tamil and received Best Translator Award in 2016 from Tamil Nadu government. I would now like to hand over the session to Mrs. Uma Balu. Thank you.
A very pleasant morning to everyone. It's a very happy moment for all of us because this is the first occasion where we have a Japanese session in the conference, and we have some very interesting papers also. I hope this session will be very interesting and a very delightful one for every one of us. So to start with, even though you call it a keynote address, it's I would like to share something which is very interesting about Japanese. See, we all know that Japanese are very hardworking and they have a very good sense of etiquette and punctuality, honesty, everything. We know all this about the way they dress, the way they present themselves, the way they do anything. Whatever they do, there is a lot of aesthetics involved. So we know quite a lot about them. But I would like to connect that with the language part, because the theme of the conference is like, how does it relate to the contemporary world? What are the changes that have happened and how far does it relate to the contemporary world? So I just chose some very interesting parts of the language, which will really connect with the contemporary style of communication. Okay, for example, let me just make it a very interactive session, okay? If you can answer my questions, you're most welcome to do that. Let it be interactive, okay? So I would like to make a comparison between Japanese and Tamil, because that is ideally the thing we should do, because we can really see a lot of connection between Tamil and Japanese. And so many people are doing a lot of research on that as well, right? They have been writing books, research articles, presenting papers and all that. So this is something very simple, but which is very striking. So if you take the sounds, for example, earlier we used to write letters and we used to spend a lot of time choosing the correct words, expressions, and we wanted to make the letter very special, right? And whenever you write, take so much time and effort writing a letter to someone, the person to whom you write should also be very special, right? So you take a lot of time thinking about the right words, expressions and all that. So that used to take a lot of time. And then the letter to post and that to reach the person and get a reply, that used to take a lot of time. But today the whole concept has changed. We have to do is just draft an email, send it to the person, immediately it reaches, immediately you get a reply. So it's become very fast. But the delight of a letter, the delight of writing a letter, the delight when the postman arrives at your gate and say, ma'am, we have a letter for you. Hey, you have a letter from this country, that country. It gives you a lot of good feeling, right? So that feeling is, I think it is reduced a lot. But what I would like to share here is something which is still existing, maybe in a slightly different way, but still exists in the language, the way we communicate and all that. So if you look at the first slide, we have a lady saying hi. This hi, actually in Japanese, it means yes. Okay? In Tamil, let us say when you communicate in Tamil, you want to say yes. How will you say? Right? That sound is enough. That means yes. Suppose you want to say no. How will you say? Mm-hmm. Right? That is also a sound. It's not a word. It's no, there are no letters, nothing. It's just a sound, but it conveys the meaning no in that given context. Right? So in Japanese we have height, but this looks like a word with some letters, right? But instead of that, even in Japanese we have but in Tamil we have in Japanese we have okay, very close, very similar, but it's the same sound, almost the same way you express it, but the meaning is exactly the same. Now, coming to the next slide, for example, you're talking about something, okay, you're talking in a flow. Suddenly you're hunting for a word or an expression or some kind of detail, some phone number, telephone number, something you wanted to include in the conversation, but you forgot. But you cannot stop the conversation abruptly till you think, find out the information and then continue the conversation. It will sound like a big gap, huge gap in the conversation. So what you do is you use something called a pause filler. Pause filler means to just fill the gap in the conversation at the same time to get some time to think, to hunt and find out the word or expression you really wanted for that conversation to continue, right? So these kind of words are also there in Japanese. So in Tamil, suppose you want to include a pause filler, you use expressions like அது வந்து அது என்னமோ ஒண்ணு சொன்னாங்களே என்னமோ ஒரு நம்பர் இருந்ததே, all this we say, right? But all these don't serve any purpose except to fill the gap. So in Japanese also we have to ne, ano ne, ano. These are all pause fillers. They don't have any meaning, but they definitely serve to fill the gap in that communication. Okay. Going to the next slide, we can have something that is very similar to this in English. You know? Yeah. So, like, these are all pause fillers, which we use very commonly in English, right? Now, going to the next slide, we have some very cute pictures. And if you look at this, these are not words. These are just double syllables which express a lot relating to that particular thing which you want to describe or express. Okay, this is part of the language called onomatopoeia. And in Tamil, we have something called Irattai Kilavi. Irattai Kilavi, actually they are also double words. But the thing is, Irattai Kilavi, if you split the double words, they don't make any sense. But when they are brought together as a double word, then it makes a lot of sense relating to the concept. For example, you're going to present a paper, right, today? So there will be a lot of tension, there will be a lot of nervousness before presenting the paper. So how do you express that in Tamil? Padapadana adichikudhu. Ayyo, enakku nenju padapadana adichikudhu. I'm going to present a paper, right? So that padapada is a Irattai Kilavi. A similar one you have in Japanese, munega doki doki suru. Doki doki is the pada, the same thing. Same expression, same feeling it expresses. So there are many such, it's rich in onomatopoeia. Such expressions are rich in Tamil as well as Japanese. They are both rich in such expression. And next one comes to the animal sounds. For example, you take the barking of a dog. How do you express that in Tamil? Vallu vallunu koraikittu. Nai vallu vallunu koraikittu. And in English you say bow wow, right? In Japanese it's wow wow. It's a Japanese dog, so it says wow wow. It's an English dog, it says bow wow. The Tamil dog is saying val val. So the expression is the same, but the words they use and the context is also very much the same, right? And if you look at that slide, you will see the pig grunts, grunt. You express that in English as grunt. And in Tamil, you say, I don't know what you say for a pig's grunt in Tamil. But in Japanese, you say, what is that? Preeti-san?
Is the slide correct, Uma ma'am?
Yeah. I wanted the previous slide. No, the next one. Oh, the next one is this, is it? Okay. So anyway, the pig's grunt is boo boo. The pig grunt is expressed as boo boo, and in English you say grunt grunt, right? And coming to the next slide, this is very common in today's communication. You use a lot of smileys. You use them to express your mood, your feeling, whether you're happy or sad or confused. Everything is totally expressed using a whole face and the whole expression. But if you look at the next slide, it is not the face. It is the whole expressive face is not used, but there are some symbols. It could be letters, it could be just numbers, or it could be letters from different languages as well. If you look at the design, for example, you have a cup in front which has an inverted A. That actually shows a smiling face, right? And on the right side, you have the, instead of the nose and the mouth, you have the Greek letter delta. And the eyes are also there, and the eyebrows, some have even the eyebrows. Okay, so these are all expressed using symbols. So in these kind of expressions, which are called emoticons, the main thing is the expression given by the eyes. The eyes express a lot. More importance is given to the eyes. And then the next slide. Yeah. When you I think most of you would have attended the Bharatanatyam performance. You can see somebody giving the beats at the background. Takka, dhimi, like that. They give the beats. So when you teach the beats to someone who is playing the drums, this is how you express the beat, and they will follow that on the drums. So these are also all this the gap, the duration of the beat changes. So accordingly, you use some expressions, verbal expressions, which they will follow on the drums. So this is what they do. Next slide, you see many people pulling the temple chariot. They have, in Japan, they have chariots as well as palanquins, both of which we see in our own temple festivals. It's a very common thing. And when they pull the chariots or carry the palanquins, it involves a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm also, because it's a festival, it's a celebration. So that energy, enthusiasm, everything has to come into the whole thing, that is pulling the chariot or carrying the palanquin. So these kind of situations, they use specific words. To give a comparison with Tamil, we have seen fishermen rowing boats, right? Especially during festivals like Onam in Kerala, you see a lot of boatmen, they row together in unison, and they have to keep themselves cheered up. And for that, for all that energy, they need that enthusiasm till the end. They have to keep on rowing. So that energy, enthusiasm has to be maintained till the end. For that, they use these kind of cheering expressions like "Elelo Ailasa." This you have heard. Fishermen use that a lot. Hoya, hoyera, hoya, hoya. These all don't mean anything, but that is the expression they use, which replenishes their energy, gives them a lot of enthusiasm, and maintains that till the end. So a very similar expression is used in Japan while pulling the chariot or carrying the palanquin. It's washoi, washoi. And then imagine this expression when you did a lot of hard work and finally you relax on a chair. What do you say? Appada. You say that, right? You heave a sigh of relief. Appada. Okay, after you finish presenting your paper, all the tension is over. Appada. I finished my paper. These kind of expressions are not unique to any language. They are there in all languages, but the words and the symbols, the sounds may be different, but they are common to all the languages. Now, we have done a lot about the sound and expression. Now, coming to something very different, it is about the physical expression. Coming to the next slide, you see two unique physical expressions by the bees. And the next slide, what is that? Yeah. they exhibit something called the round dance and the wobble dance. The movement, physical movement of the bees communicates a lot to the whole community of bees. For example, they go in search of flowers to collect honey and pollen, right? So whether the source of honey and pollen, the flower bed, is nearby or far away, if it is nearby, they will perform the round dance. If it is far away, they'll perform the waggle dance, and this waggle dance will also show the direction in which the flower bed is located. So it gives two important information, that is the flower bed is far away and also the direction in which the flower bed is located, so that the entire the community of bees can fly in that direction, find the flower bed and collect the honey and pollen, right? So this is a physical movement which is still, it will not change with time now, because bees are not going to learn anything digital communication or anything and change their way they communicate. This is going to be there forever. But the way humans communicate by physical movement, we have something called body language, right? And that is a huge, vast subject. We are not going to include all that. But I would like to share something which is very, very common to us, but completely confusing for the Japanese. See, for example, when you want to say yes, what do? You move your head up and down. Yes. If you want to say no, you move your head sideways. No. Right? But if you want to say okay, you move your head in a circular fashion, left to right. But this is something which completely confuses the Japanese. They don't understand what is this. Yes is understood, no is understood. What is this okay? They had many people have asked me this question. So I said, see, that depends on the question. If they ask you, okay, is today Wednesday? You will say no. Today is not Wednesday. So you will move your head sideways. Is today Thursday? Then you will say yes. You will move up and down. But somebody asks you, shall we go for a movie? You will say yes, okay. That is not just yes, it is okay. Complete agreement with what the person says. The person is inviting you for a movie. You will be definitely agreeing with his idea. So you will say okay. So the way you move your head is different. It's not yes, it's not no, it is okay. So this is one example I wanted to include, because this is something which completely confuses the Japanese, and that is very common to us. So this is about human communication. And then coming to the last part. What is that? Could I have the next slide?
Is this the slide, Uma?
Yeah, this is the slide. This is called Aizuchi. For example, somebody is telling you a story. You are listening to the story with a lot of interest. So, apra ennachu? Apdiya. You use all these expressions, right? When you listen to a story. So these are the expressions called Aizuchi in Japanese. And torekara. These are all expressions they use. So when listening to something which is being narrated, we use this Aizuchi in Japanese. So with that, I would like to conclude my speech. And now let us move on to the presenters. We have a lot of interesting papers today. And I would like to make a small introduction about the presenters. We have Hima here, Hima Subramanian. She is a fashion designer, and she has been learning Japanese very recently. She's going to appear for the Japanese exam in December. And it is something very interesting I found, that is, it is not just to learn the language. There are many other things that encourage people to learn Japanese. For example, there is our other presenter, Mr. Vignesh. He has been into anime. He is very interested. He is a chartered accountant by profession, but his interest in anime has brought him to learn Japanese. He's learning with a lot of enthusiasm. And we have Preeti-san. She is also going to present a paper. And we also have Nivedita-san. So our backgrounds are different. It's not always connected to the language directly. There are other things that motivate us to learn Japanese. We can watch anime better. We can understand anime better. Instead of reading a translated book, I can read the original. So that is a feeling which comes when you watch anime, when you are into fashion design again. The Japanese design, the Japanese fabric, the color, the style, everything inspires you to create something unique. It's a blend of design, color, and all that. So that creates something unique. So that is what Hima is into. So I'm sure the papers are going to be very interesting today. And we'll have a lot of interaction after the paper presentations. We'll have a lot of interaction. If you have any questions, you're most welcome to ask them. So let us move on to the presentations. Okay, Hima, I think you are ready with your paper. We can start.
Yes. Yes, sure.
Yes.
So,
Yes, Hima, you can start.
yes, sure. So, all of you view my presentation?
Yes, it's visible, ma'am.
Yeah. So, hi all. Ohio gozaimasu. A pleasant morning to you all. I extend my thanks to the SRN group, the organizers of the conference, Uma Sensei, who is the chairing person, my fellow participants, the audience, for this opportunity to present my paper titled Japanese Color and Design, a study of its influence on contemporary lifestyle. So I'm Hima, a fashion designer based at Cochin. So let's go into the slide and know more. So the
Your
first
slide is
slide,
not visible, ma'am. Your slide is not visible.
can you see now?
Now you have stopped sharing. Can you just share, present it again? You can click on present now once again and try sharing it.
Okay, sure. Is it visible now?
Yes, you are just about to, the slide is not visible. Your name and your name alone is there on the screen. The
It
word
shows you are
presentation.
presenting, but the slide is not visible.
Yes.
What about now? Can you see it now?
No, ma'am, it's not visible yet.
Okay, Hima, if you have a problem, send it to Walter San. He will put it on the screen. You have
Okay,
Walter
so
San's ID?
no, I don't have it with me now.
You have, ma'am, you can, ma'am, you can send it to me. I'm just, if you look at your chat, the
Yeah,
chat, I'm just sending you my email.
sure.
Can you just quickly send it to me? I'll try
Yeah.
sharing it here.
Please send it to me. We do one thing, Hima.
Yeah,
Switch over to another presenter. Meanwhile, you can send it to Walter San. Okay?
yeah, sure.
No
Thanks.
problem.
I
No
sent
tension.
my email in
Don't
the
take.
chat. In the chat
Okay,
box.
you can use that time.
Yeah, sure. Ma'am.
Send it to me there. I can present it.
Yeah, okay. So we'll move on to another presenter. Meanwhile, you can get it done. Okay,
Sure.
fine. So now I would request Vignesh San. Could you present your paper? Vignesh, what happened? You've muted yourself.
Your mic is muted, sir. Kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah. What happened, Vignesh? Hello? Vignesh?
Sir, kindly unmute your mic, sir.
You have to unmute yourself, Vignesh. We can't hear you.
Okay, I think he has an issue with the Google Meet.
Vignesh, you can do one thing. Send it to Walter, sir. You have the ID, right?
No, his microphone settings, he has an issue.
Oh.
We can, I think, go on to the next presentation and then we can come back to sir.
Yeah. Walter, sir, did you receive Hima's presentation?
Not yet, ma'am. Yes, I've received it. I've received it.
Okay. Yeah, then maybe
I'm
we can
just
start.
going to share the screen now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hima, ma'am, are you ready to begin, ma'am? Shall I start the presentation?
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
It's just loading. 1 second. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. Hima, carry on.
Yeah, shall I start again or shall we continue with the slides?
No, you can just start.
Ma'am.
First flip. Yeah, you can start.
Okay, so hi all, Ohio gozaimasu. So a pleasant morning to you all. I thank the SRM group, the organizers of the conference, Uma Sensei, especially who is chairing the session, my fellow participants and the audience for giving me an opportunity to present my paper, Japanese Color and Design, a study of its influence on contemporary lifestyle. And in the same, I'm Hima, a fashion designer. So, can we go to the next slide? So, these are the three main Japanese motifs we come across in our day-to-day life. So, for a designer like me, the three main motifs are the sakura or the cherry blossom. The second picture is the otsukimi or the moon rabbit, and the third picture is the suru. So the meaning of these motifs are sakura is a cherry blossom, that's a full-blown cherry blossom. You can see mainly during the springtime in Japan. Then the otsukimi or the moon rabbit, it symbolizes reproductivity, then fertility, etc. to the Japanese. And the suru, that's the crane, it symbolizes longevity, good health, peace, etc. So we have also heard stories saying if a Japanese is suffering any health related issue or ailments, they start folding origami cranes, and once they start folding, they make a vow that I'll complete 1,000 folding of the crane. It means it will give them good luck, good health, etc. So the next slide. Next slide, we are into the Japanese kimono. So, as we all know, Japan is a home to several untainted cultural traditions. From the rest of the world, Japan is known for their textiles, especially because they are very intricate in nature, and the production of the textile is also remarkably astounding in nature. So we'll see the different styles of kimono, and I've included only 5 main styles of the kimono in the presentation. So the next slide. So the first style of kimono is the plain iromoji. Iro in Japanese means color. So plain iromoji means it is a semi-casual style of a kimono that are mostly worn for tea ceremonies by young Japanese women. So they are very solid in color. The style that varies is only with the color, but the wearing of the belt, etc., is the same. So some people say that if some ladies wear age appropriate colors which is not suitable for their age, they get teased. That's what is said in the plain iromoji. So next is the homongi. That is, I hope you can see the pictures in the presentation.
Yes, it's clear, ma'am.
Yeah. So the homongi is a very intricate type of kimono. It is kind of a formal kimono, and what is said is the intricate designs that are used in the kimono. They look like a painting that covers from the shoulder, or they may even come from the waist and extend up to the hemline. They are very intricate, and sometimes even gold threads are used in the homongi kimono. That's what it's said. And they are used for some kind of formal events, etc. Next style of kimono, can we go to the next slide? Next is the tomisode. Tomisode is also known as a wedding kimono. So these are worn for the weddings by the Japanese women, and they are also similar to the homongi, like using of exquisite patterns, color palettes, and designs, etc. And next is a furisode. I don't know why the image is not here.
It's okay, ma'am. It's okay. You can just tell us in detail, in a brief about the style.
Yeah, so yeah, furisode is actually furisode is the type of kimono that is very exquisite in look. Like if you see, they have got the longest sleeves other than compared to the other styles of kimonos. These are worn especially by unmarried women or women who are going to take premarital shoots before their wedding. So, and sometimes these furisode are worn by young women for their age ceremonies in Japan or during their graduation ceremonies. The next and the last type of kimono that we are seeing is the yukata. Yukata, as it seems to look like, is the most semi-formal type of kimono. Japanese call it like the bathrobe because it's very simple, lightweight, and unlike other kimonos, you do not need extra coverings that go inside the kimono. It can be just worn above the dress that you are wearing, unlike other styles of kimono which requires a lot of layering. And the yukata is also known as a summer kimono. Nowadays, yukata is seen coming in cotton, linen, or even polyester type blends if we see in Japan. And sometimes it can even mislead us. Sometimes it might look like a polyester fabric, but if we look closely, and if you for a textile person with the feel itself, they can understand is it a polyester or does it have a silk origin, etc. So and if anyone travels to Japan also, and if anyone wants to try a kimono, the first option would be a yukata because it's simple to be worn and you do not need extra coverings for wearing a yukata. So can we? So with this, we have come to the different styles of kimono, and the next slide just gives you different types of women's kimono. So women have exclusive color schemes for the kimonos, unlike men who usually go for solid colors like black, blue, gray, or whatever. And the patterns are also very less compared to that of a woman. So, and if we couldn't see we can see the different types of kimonos here. And uchikaki is the exquisite kimono that are worn by the empress. It requires so many layers of covering that goes inside this kimono. And we couldn't see the furisode in the last slide. This is the furisode. The first one is the furisode. They are the parallel sleeves. They are very parallel to the ground. It looks like a woman. It appears as if she's flying like a bat. So they are very long sleeves. It has so many different patterns. They come in cherry blossom, embroidery, or some other thing according to them. Then I've got yeah. We are with this. We are done with the type of kimono. Can we go to the next slide? So, coming to my topic, how Japanese influenced my designer's perspective into my home furnishing is about the tanka paintings. And the next coming slides will show you the things that I have created out of Japanese inspiration. So, this is a tanka painting. Tanka painting actually has origins from Tibet and all that. These are actually scroll paintings that uses natural pigments, and especially they have a smoothing feel because all the pigments are natural. The color schemes are also very natural, etc. The striking feature of this tanka painting is that they have a central deity that can be Buddha or anyone, and some paintings also show people's placed in appropriate symmetrical distance in between them. They need not contribute to the central theme of the tanka painting, but it can be related in some way or the other. That is the tanka painting. So next slide. Can we go to the next slide? So I've chosen Zen Buddhism into my home furnishing. So what Zen Buddhism means, it is not a religion, it is just a way of living. Zen is a way of living, and if you trace back, the word Zen has its roots in India from the word called Dhyan. Dhyan means concentration. So if you contemplate it, and if you see its root from India to Japan, it has manifolded into Zen Buddhism. So Zen Buddhism mainly involves Buddha. And the feature of Zen Buddhism is that they are very clutter-free, mostly meditative in surroundings, then gives a lot of peace and harmony to the person who is into this atmosphere. So the second picture gives you an insight of the Zen gardens. Zen gardens uses a lot of plants, flowers, etc., so that it can invoke your meditative feel. And sometimes even artificial waterways are also created in the sideways to give you a scenery-like image. And if it is taken into our homes, Zen Buddhism uses only natural lighting. The use of artificial lights are very minimal, and even if they are used, it goes into the soft tones, like somewhat like the LED lighting that are not very bright and all that. Otherwise, sometimes they may use candles instead of artificial lights if needed in the night. So we'll see how it looks in Japan. Next slide is on that. Zen Buddhism in Japanese homes. The first picture is about the Zen-inspired interior design. all the interiors, I mean the seating are all on the floor level itself, because it makes use of our muscles, and at least we feel that we are doing an exercise even without doing it. Nowadays, if we take in India itself, how many of us can say that we have a meal sitting on the floor? Maybe a very few of them, but Zen makes it a practice that you have to have your meal or anything seated on the floor. And so this inspired me a lot. And the second thing is a Zen inspired cabin, as they call for the kitchen. So if you have a close look, you can see the arrangement of the pebbles. They are in the decreasing size, from the big one to the small one. It says they all have a meditative effect and have a soothing feel also. So let's see how I develop this into my furniture. So can we go to the next slide? The space I've utilized here is a studio apartment, taking in life of a techie, because his life is full of hustle bustle, and it always has a rugged ambience because he cannot manage work life and home. So in order to give him peace and move on to the next day, Zen Buddhism gives a key for all of that. It connects the gap where, it gives you an energy to start a brighter day the next day. So this is the first view of the studio apartment, and the things that I have made using for furnishing using Zen as my theme. So next slide please. So what I have done is pre-fitted metal eyelet curtains. Then the curtains have got the people leaf motif. People leaf is always it goes in sync with the Buddha. So I'll show you the coming slide gives you the picture of all that. Then the dining table is a round table. So I've used a round round cover for the round table. Then, of course, a slip cover for the chairs, because they have to be neatly kept. Then, for the sofa, I've used hand-painted rubberized Buddha cushion cover that has a Buddha face on it. Then, coming to the bedroom, you have bedspreads, bolsters, pillow covers, etc. And the technique that we used on the bolster cover is sublimation printing technique. It's not sophisticated. It may look fainted, but in some way or the other, it gives you a meditative feel. So next slide. So these are the different views of the studio apartment, and I'll show you how it looks with the thing that I have in hand with me. So this is the hand. Can you all see?
Yes, it's visible, ma'am.
Yeah, this is the hand painted rubberized Buddha cushion cover. So that is being placed in the wall. You can see in a chair over in the slide. Then this is the cushion cover that is used along with the bedding that has a people leaf motif on that. This is a closer look of the same. Then this is the bolster cover that uses the sublimation printing. You can see it looks very faded, but it's not faded. Sublimation into clothing means it gives kind of a faded effect. Then these are the pre-fitted metal eyelet curtains with the people leaf motif on them. Other than the visual that we see in the slide, my effort to make you understand about the home furnishing is through the visual appearance. So can we move on to the next slide? And the different views of the bedroom with the Zen-inspired way of living, with the cushion covers, the bolster, the duvet, and the bedsheet. All together is very simple, clutter-free, and mostly using daylight. It allows daylight to enter into your bedrooms. So, yeah. Next slide. So thank you all. Arigato gozaimasu. So with this, I would like to end my presentation on a keynote. Senrei no Michi mo Ipokara in Japanese, which means even a 1,000-mile journey or a great journey begins with a simple step. So this was a very good platform for me to make you understand how Japanese culture has influenced my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful presentation.
Thank
It
you,
was
sir.
very picturesque presentation. Uma, ma'am. Ma'am, your mic is muted, ma'am.
Yes. Hima, that was very colorful, very interesting, and very inspiring also. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
We
Master.
all appreciate your work, and the presentation was also done with a lot of good confidence, good level of confidence, right? Okay. So let us move on.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Keep working on this, okay? Yeah. All
Yes,
our wishes are there with you. So let's move to the next presenter. Vignesh, are you ready?
Yeah, ma'am. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes.
Perfectly
Yeah,
audible.
fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. So I have shared my presentation with Walter as well, but let's see.
Walter sir, have you received the presentation?
No, I have my presentation with me as well. So
okay. So you can do it, right?
You can share your screen.
Share the screen, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. Then let's get started. Ohayo gozaimasu. Great morning to everyone. I have been preceded by 2 technical presentations, and I don't have anything extremely technical on my side. It's just going to be something I hope to share, which is just my life experience, right? So it's not technical at all, and yeah, so I'm just feeling a bit of doki doki because of all this technical issues and all that coming up. I never expected to have these issues. Been presenting for a long time, but didn't.
Okay, so you're doing great.
Yeah. So let me start with my presentation, right? So this is going to be nothing but my life experience on how I started on Japanese. So that's how it's going to be. It's going to be very simple. It's not going to be technical at all, and it's going to be very short, is what I hope. Okay. So the thing is, before for anyone to get some passion into something, right, there should be some some driving force, right? Somewhere that people should get the feeling to get started on something, right? And for me, this happened to be animes. Okay, so my the first thing when I did when I was growing up is we all take up some part-time activity, and I used to watch a bit of animes, right? Now I'm just going to share that experience with you guys and see how I went along, right? So yeah, my gateway animes were I have a lot of gateway animes. I couldn't present all of them, right? For the sake of time, I just presented 4, right? But the thing is, I started on animes quite young, and I started watching animes, and I was inspired by the creativity. I was inspired by the story. I was inspired by the drawing. I thought it was a fantastic way to present something. Like I have always watched movies and all that, but I never thought that you could get this creative. Conveying grit, conveying determination, conveying motivation. If you were to watch some of the animes these days, especially some of the sports-based animes, the way they convey the emotions, it's so realistic, and I didn't believe that it could be possible. Well, initially, I also shunned animes. I thought animes were for kids and all that. But I started getting hooked on it, and slowly I started watching animes, and it became a very good pastime for me. Whenever I get my time, I used to watch stuff, and it was like that for a while, right? But till this point, it's all about animes. I didn't know anything about Japanese. I used to watch my animes in English, and whenever I had some time, and then I used to get on with my work. But slowly, the interest started creeping in me. Why should I watch the animes in a foreign language? So as in English was the foreign language here, because the animes were originally produced and made in Japanese, right? So I got slowly started getting the interest, and finally I, with some push from my friends as well, a few of them watched the original thing, right? And they were saying that it had a different feel and authenticity to it. So I kind of got interested in that as well. So what I did is from going from this watching animes through in the English medium, right? I started watching animes in the Japanese medium. So that is my dubbing to subbing experience. So dubbing generally means you get a dub for everything, right? In if you have been watching movies or animes or anything of that sort, you would understand this. Dubbing is generally when you get foreign language dubbed to your language, right? English or whatever language you want. And subbing is when you have the same foreign language audio, but you just have a subtitles going on, right? So I started going from dubbing to subbing, right? Initially, it was very weird, and the slang of the language, the way they conveyed emotions, everything was actually a bit weird. It was new to me, right? And initially, I was getting used to it, but once I started understanding a bit of it, I started understanding the style and all that. It actually made more sense, and it seemed more authentic rather than getting a buff English voice saying I'll do this or I'll do that, right? This was actually more realistic, and this actually seemed to attract me more. So this was when I first started getting a bit into Japanese. This is the point I would say. At this point, I didn't know any Japanese at all, obviously, but I did have a small interest on Japanese. So that went to learning a bits and pieces, bits of words here and there, right? Learning words like arigato or daijobu or nani. Okay, these are the first words I learned, right? And uh, they always have a special memory to me, right? Be it anything. I even know some complicated words, not because I know a lot of Japanese. Okay, I'm still a I'm still a novice when it comes to Japanese. I just started my learning, and I'm not that good at Japanese at all. My ma'am would vouch for that. Okay, but when it comes to these words, at least I know some weird words like sukuyomi and all that, which I don't know if traditional people would come up with those words in the first instance, right? So like all many words, be it arigato, dejobu, nani, or be it technical, like we were just discussing in some class, a couple of weeks back, kaminari or all these things. Like these words, I had no way of I sort of started relating to these words. Bits and pieces. I started picking up here and there. Whatever they, if it was a war cry, I started picking it up. If it was something that got repeated enough amount of times, I think arigato is the most repeated words in Japanese anime. I don't know why. They seem to thank people a lot. Okay, so that sort of acted as a standing point for me to understand the culture as well. How they were polite, how they actually wanted to thank people all the time. How they were being polite. How Japanese culture had this mentality to give a lot of respect. All these things I started picking up here and there and understanding more and more on Japanese. And this phase of my Japanese, right? Technically, again, this is not Japanese. This is still anime. But this phase of it had a lot of Googling. Okay, learning these words, just Googling them, because I didn't know what word meant what. Okay, so I just picked up a random word, kaminari. I don't even know what kaminari actually meant. So Google it. Okay, Google everything. Okay, so this phase had a lot of Googling, and yeah, it was actually quite fun going through this phase. And finally, it started motivating me to, this started getting me the question, why shouldn't I actually try Japanese? Because I seem to be attracted to this language. Why not just give it a try? Okay. So yeah, that led to me actually having, I made a call in 2020 is going to be the year. Okay. I can't, yeah. So 2020, I decided, what, I'm going to get Japanese into my profile, and I decided to give Japanese a go. That's how it's, my learning of Japanese started, right? And I have a lot of interest in Japanese culture as well. I found that I might not, again, my knowledge might be strictly coming from video media, right? So it taught me right, but I started getting a lot of interest, and I started studying a bit on it, and whatever from my perspective that I could understand and relate to, and I started appreciating them for whatever they were doing. And slowly, this appreciation turned to me wanting to learn about it. And here I am. I started learning, and occasionally, very occasionally, most of it is not that way. Occasionally, I do get some answers right. Before like before something happens, and even before my mom says something, I get the answer right, and that feels good. So I have to thank anime for that, I guess. Okay, those occasional answers. Anyway, thank you. Thanks a lot for this opportunity, for allowing me to present. I know it's a very short presentation. I know it's not technical at all, but this was just my life experience, and I wanted to share it with you guys. It's really, really, it makes me really happy that I've been given this opportunity. I want to thank Uma ma'am especially for actually having the confidence and letting me present in the first place, even after hearing my topic. So I have to thank her for this, and thanks a lot to everyone for allowing me to present. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vignesh. That was very inspiring for us to know how anime inspired you to learn Japanese and introduced you to the language. Over to you, Uma ma'am.
Yeah. Vignesh sir, I already know you're a very busy, very, very busy professional. And the first thing is, I should thank you for giving us the time to make a nice presentation and to share with us what inspired you to learn Japanese. And because of your busy schedule, we have even been missing a lot of classes. But still, today I'm especially thankful to you for, in spite of all the hiccups which we had initially now, because you needed a little time to connect, right? So that is okay. Anyway, it happens in all conferences, so we have got used to that. But anyway, thank you so much for your time and very nice presentation. And please keep learning your Japanese and enjoy your anime in the original. Okay, thank you so much. So let us move on to Preeti-san. Preeti-san, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the paper you're going to present? You've been waiting for a long time, I could see that.
もちろん言います。皆さんおはようございます。馬さんのプレゼンテーションはとても面白かったです。私はプリーズです。SRM 大学で基本の日本語を知っています。今日のトピックはインド日本の文化の当事点について話したいです。So my topic would be the Indo-Japan cultural similarities.
Yes. Are you going to make it in Japanese or English?
It's in English. 英語で。
Yes, yes. So that everyone can understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
ちょっと待って。ちょっと待って。
はい。
皆さん見えますか? Is it visible?
Yes, it's
visible. Yes, it's visible, ma'am.
はい、始めます。So in my article, I would like to present the cultural similarities between India and Japan. Both the countries have always shared a good relationship with regard to political relations, economic cooperation, technological cooperation, correlation in business, railway sector, education, culture, and many other factors. It is to be noted that the Indo-Japan relationship has a long history rooted in many aspects. There is a bilateral connection in terms of cultural affinity and spiritual analogy. Culture is nothing but ideas, customs, traditions, and behavior of a mankind of a particular people or society. While going through the historic culture of both the regions, I personally found many interesting similarities and connections of cultures between India and Japan, which was due to the diffusion of trades from India to Japan, indirectly through China and Korea. This ethnology discussed below gives the indirect cultural exchange in many aspects between the two nations. So there is no doubt that much cultural practices of Japan is definitely influenced by Indian culture, such as usage of honorifics like Tiru or Tirumati in Tamil, Shri or Srimati, or even Ji in India, and San used for respecting the people like Mr. or Miss, and even Sama for respecting king, queen, god, and even for customers in Japan. Adding on it, the likeness of the martial arts such as the Kalaripayattu, Silambam, and Gatka in India, where in the other hand we have samurai, karate, kendo, judo in Japan. Gestures like bowing, that is the ojiki that we have in Japan. Unlike the Western countries, I don't think the Western countries have much of these, gestures to greet people. We also have food and agricultural similarities in the traditional practices like doll festival. That is, here we have the Navaratri and they have Hina Matsuri. The family system where people used to live in joint families earlier, and there will be one head for the family, similar to that of India. But anyhow, however, the joint family system has slowly declined nowadays. And also the similarity in the worship complex, the influence of Indian languages, as Uma-san beautifully explained in her presentation. She's also highlighted one of the most important points of the language similarity. So here I would like to highlight the similarities of certain factors in precise. So starting with the food, India and Japan being the Asian countries. Am I Maska? Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So India and Japan, being the Asian countries, have a multitude of cultural similarities. Both eat and grow rice and use noodles in their cuisines, especially in Northeast and South India. Both have dumplings in their cuisines. That is the momos or modak in India. In South India, we even call it as the kolkate. That is very famous for the Vinayagar Chaturthi we make. And in Japan, they have nikuman. Nikuman is also, so you can see it in the second picture. So this is the picture of nikuman. So one of the famous beverages, that is a tea, is also very important in both the regions. Though tea was actually originated in India and its cultivation is a major part of the agriculture here, it is also diffused in many parts of the world. Japan even follows the tradition of known as a sado, that is a tea ceremony. So moving on to the next factor, that is a traditional practice and the doll festival. So as I told you earlier, this is another interesting, distinct cultural feature that India shares with Japan. Beckons householders to rummage their attics and bring down their choicest dolls to decorate their homes up the 9-day Golu. Navaratri celebrates the power of female goddesses in all their manifestations. These 9 days of Navaratri celebrates the 9 incarnations of Goddess Durga, with each day designated to an avatar of Goddess Durga. During Golu, the families of friends visit each other's houses with gifts to view and discuss over the doll display, and they even share festive foods and sometimes even sing devotional songs. On the other hand, we have Hina Matsuri in Japan. This Hina Matsuri is also known as the Doll's Day or the Girl's Day, that is celebrated on March 3rd, that is 3/3. The festival derives its origin from a millennium-old Japanese custom, Hina Nagashi, of setting straw dolls containing all the evil spirits from the land adrift into the sea. During Hina Matsuri, parents pray for their daughter's happiness, growth, and good health on this day. The festival had its origin about thousand years ago in the Heian period. It is a tradition to display ceremonial dolls on tiers of shelves covered with scarlet carpet. These dolls are dressed in the fashion of the people of the ancient court. The emperor and the empress are placed on the uppermost tier, followed by the ladies in the waiting and ministers. And invite their friends to a home party to celebrate their festival. Many people prepare a special meal for their girls, including savory dishes with the dolls of various deities and dolls of all styles and sizes for 9 days, Whereas the Hina Matsuri in Japan, they have it as a single day counterpart. There are multiple religions followed based on different regions, customs, and traditions. The exchanges primarily as a result of Buddhism, which spread indirectly from India to Japan. The Indian monk Bodhisena arrived in Japan in 736 to spread Buddhism. Buddhism and the intrinsically linked Indian culture had a great impact on Japanese culture, which is still felt today, and resulted in a natural sense of amiability between the two nations. As a result of the link of Buddhism between India and Japan, monks and scholars often embarked on voyages between the two nations. The cultural exchanges between the two nations created many parallels in their folklore, sometimes bearing reference to common deities. Always starting with God Ganesha. God Ganesha, worshipped as a remover of obstacles and as a god of good fortune, is known as God Kamipen in Japan, worshipped for the sea. Lord Yama, riding a buffalo, is known as Lord Ematen in Japan, as a chief known as a chief judge in the afterlife. Lord Indra, the king of heaven, is known as Lord spiritual energy of the human body, is known as Chakura in Japan. God Brahma is known as God Bunten, represented with 4 faces and 4 arms, who lords over the heavenly realm of rebirth called the Brahmaloka. And coming to the goddesses, Goddess Lakshmi, known as the goddess Chijo Ten in Japan, worshipped as a goddess of fortune, prosperity, and beauty, depicted with Nyoi Hoju gem, that is a wish-fulfilling gem, jewel in her hand, similar to the depiction of goddess Lakshmi with a gold coin standing on a lotus flower. And next we have goddess Benzaiten in Japan, similar to goddess Saraswati, represented with the musical instrument Viva in her hand. On the other hand, goddess Saraswati has Veena in her hand. Now coming to the language reciprocity. The seed syllables, so starting with the similar influence of Sanskrit in Japan, the seed syllables or the bijaksharas in Sanskrit are considered as a holy model in Japan, and people even have it in their homes for spiritual benefits. Sanskrit alphabets can still be seen in many Japanese homes. The 5th century, that is the Siddham script, which has disappeared in India, is still in use in Japan. This is axiomatic that there are many similarities in languages and that there are many more interconnections between the cultures. And coming to the major interesting part is the similarities between Tamil and Japanese. There also seems an affinity between Tamil and Japanese. Susumu Ono, a renowned linguist and classicist, came along and popularized the theory that Japanese was overwhelmingly influenced by Dravidian languages, particularly Tamil, brought to these shores some 2000 years ago during the Yawoi period, when the Japanese began the rice paddy cultivation. The comparability in grammar, certain presence and absence of relative pronouns, a likeness in word order, and a striking resemblance in the languages. The particles are the same and is easily relatable to Japanese. Being a Tamilian and Japanese learner, I found striking similarities between these two languages and also felt easy to form sentences in Japanese just by thinking of that in Tamil. So looking at some examples, I don't have a picture for that, maybe I'll just read it out. The expression, Kono kusuri wa kikimasu ka, which means Kono kusuri is this medicine. Kono kusuri wa kikimasu ka, is this medicine effective? But when spoken, listen, because it is actually the kanji which differs kikimasu of hearing and effective. When you want to say, try this cake in Japanese, you would say, Kono keki wo tabete mite. In Tamil too, we have a similar sentence pattern, say, saaptu paar, which means eat and see. When you leave home, you would tell the folks at home போயிட்டு வரேன் in Tamil, which when translated would mean I'll go and come back. In Japanese, we have ittekimasu. In Japanese, we have ittekimasu, which means literally போயிட்டு வரேன் in Tamil. When you're going out to buy something, you say வாங்கிட்டு வரேன் in Tamil, which in English would be I'll buy something and come. The Japanese say katekimasu, which means the same thing. Katekimasu is literally வாங்கி வைக்கிறேன், வாங்கிட்டு வரேன். And when you give something to someone, you say சொல்லி கொடுப்பேன் in Tamil, which means teach and give in Japanese. Which means teach and give. And in Japanese, you say oshiete agemasu. So whereas this oshieru is to teach, you would say katte okimasu. Katte is buying and okimasu is to keep. So katte okimasu, which is nothing but vaangi vekkren in Tamil. So to buy and keep in English. Similarly, when you're hungry, you would say onakaga sutteimasu in Japanese, which is a literal translation of Tamil sentence vairu pasikkudu. The Japanese particles are also directly relatable to Tamil. The particle ba in Japanese, even though does not carry a separate meaning, is used as a subject marker. Taking this sentence for an instance, koreva pen des, which in Tamil means idu pen, idu vandu pen, which conveys the meaning this is a pen. The particle mo, which means also in English, denotes the exact sound of in Tamil. So koremo pennides, which means iduvum. That sound denotes the also. That is a mo particle. The particle wo in Japanese is used to refer direct objects. Like if you want to say, I buy a camera, which can be translated in Tamil as camera vai vaangren. So being that vai referring to the particle wo. So bringing the correlation of pronouns in Japanese, we have pronouns like hono, sono, ano, ando in Japanese, which exactly in Tamil means in the, anda, and ender. Whereas when it is translated into English, it just means this, that, and which. This, that, and which can easily be told in English, whereas only in Tamil we have the exact expression, that is the precise expression of in the, under. Either is also this, in the is also this, but only in Tamil we have the exact explanation for that. Another interesting similarity is the ideophonic words, as Uma Sensei told. Ideophonic words which is uncommon or relatively less in Western languages. We have numerous words in the category in both Tamil and Japanese. Example, gada gada, tona tona, viru viru in Tamil. We also have typical words in waku waku, oki doki, and now doki doki, and many other. So apart from this, there are various Japanese grammar and phrases which could be very much expressive as that of Tamil. So now coming to Tirukural and Haiku. Tirukural is one of the most important poetic forms of Tamil written by Thiruvalluvar. It is a very short poetic form in just 2 lines, with the first line consisting of 4 words and the second line consisting of 3 words. On the other hand, we have haiku in Japan, which is a traditional poem with 3 lines, usually written with a 5, 7, and 5 syllable count. Even though the idea of haiku originated in Japan, there are numerous haiku poems written in Tamil as well. While Tirukural mainly emphasizes the human values and hints a message, haiku, however, focuses mainly on the nature and does not always convey a message. In addition to that, Tamil movies have also created a huge impact in Japan. In fact, the dubbed version of the Rajinikanth film Muthu in 1998 created a great wave of interest in Japan, and the consequent interest evinced by the Japanese. So coming to the end of the presentation, so I would like to conclude by saying that between India and Japan, the cross-cultural comparisons bring down the similarities between the 2 nations in various angles. However, all the traits may not have directly spread from India to Japan, but one simply cannot deny the fact the 2 cultures are in close proximity. which proves that there is a high chance that many of the cultural traits have been spread indirectly from which can still be seen in the practice of the Japanese culture. Arigato, arigato gozaimasu. このような機会を作ってくれてどうもありがとうございました。
Okay, Preeti-san, that was a very interesting presentation.
ありがとうござい
It
ま
was
す。
like a mini tour of Japan, mini cultural tour of Japan. You had taken effort to cover almost all the aspects.
ありがとうございます、
So,
先生。
it's a good introduction to people who have never been to Japan or don't know much about Japan, and that was very interesting.
Thank you so much.
for the lovely presentation.
Thank you so
Okay,
much,
keep
ma'am.
going, keep doing more of it. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes. So, Walter sir, shall we move on to the next presentation? Nivedita sir is ready.
Yes, shall we start, Uma-san?
Yes, ma'am. Studies. Oh, yes. We are on the
日本大丈夫ですか？
大丈夫。Please.
はい。皆さん、こんにちは。日本のエチケット。私は日本のエチケットについて発表します。どの国にも独特の文化、伝統エチケットがあります。日本はエチケットの厳しい国であるという評判があります。日本では礼儀作法、礼儀正しさ、他者への配慮は高く評価されています。国によってエチケットが異なります。日本のエチケットは他の国のエチケットと比べてみましょう。お辞儀。日本ではお辞儀をして挨拶をします。挨拶の時に相手との間に隔たりを置くのが日本と中国では礼儀だとされてきました。それに対して欧米では握手をしたり抱き合ったりして挨拶をします。インドでは手と手を合わせて挨拶をします。挨拶は日本文化で非常に重要であると考えられています。最も一般的な挨拶はおはようございます。午前11時まではおはようございます。午後遅くまではこんにちは。暗くなった時にはこんばんはを使います。インドではヒンディ語の一般的な挨拶はナマステで、タミル語の挨拶はワナカムです。名刺。日本では名刺を交換する場合、カードを両手で持つことが重要です。名刺を交換するとき、両方とも向かい合って立って他の人がそれを読むことができるように、両手でカードを差し出します。カードを受け取ってもすぐポケットに入れたり、テーブルに置いたりはしません。カードは両手で受けてから名前などを確認してテーブルに置きます。敬意を示すことが目的です。アメリカでは片手で名刺を渡します。人の呼び方。子供の呼び方はちゃんで、君はほとんどの場合、男性の親しい友人や若い男の子向け、さんは大人向け、およびお客様向けである神様にも使用されることもあります。インドの敬語のいくつかの例には、サンスクリット語の場合はシリ、男性の場合はシリ、テルグ語の場合はガル、ヒンディ語の場合はジなどがあります。食べ物。日本の食事は伝統的にいただきますという言葉から始まります。食事を終えたら丁寧な言い方でごちそうさまでしたと言います。これは美味しかったという意味です。 日本人は箸でご飯を食べます。西洋人はナイフとフォークで食べます。箸。日本では奈良時代から箸が使われてきました。不揃いの箸は使用しません。料理に箸を縦に刺すのは礼儀違反です。食事中、箸を置きたい場合は、箸置きというものがあるので、その上に置きます。箸を交差しておくのは良くないことです。交差した箸は不運をもたらすと言われています。日本の文化では、ご飯に箸を縦に刺すのは、葬儀の時だけに行うことです。日本の最古の箸は竹から作られたものが多かったです。近年は他の木から作られたものが多い。韓国ではステンレス製のものがよく使われます。誰かの家を訪ねる。多くの日本人は自分の家で客をもてなすのは謙虚すぎると考えています。家に入る前には靴を脱ぎます。日本では靴は家の中では履きません。インドでも家に入る前に靴を脱ぎます。インドでは誰かの家に行くとき、お菓子、果物や花を持って行ってあげます。贈り物。贈り物は日本の普通のことであり、さまざまな種類の贈り物がさまざまな機会であります。贈り物を渡すことは、料亭で贈り物を渡すことは重要です。これは敬意の表れです。新年の時、おじさんやおばさんがお年玉と言われる小さな閉じた封筒で子供にいくらかお金を渡します。インドの文化では、お金や贈り物は右手だけで行われます。お金の支払い。日本では、レジの近くに小さなおトレイを置くのが一般的です。これにより、客はレジに直接お金を渡すのではなく、トレイにお金を置きます。そのようなトレイを提供する場合、それを無視して、レジ係が手で受け取るようなことは礼儀違反です。このエチケットは他の国にはありません。このように日本と他の国では異なるマナーが守られています。私たちの行動の仕方は明らかに異なっていますが、基本的には世界の文化としては意味は同じかもしれません。日本では日本人がこのようなエチケットが大切にして守っているように思える。日本の名刺のやり方、両手で丁寧に持って渡すマナーがいいと思います。私の発表はこれで終わります。ありがとうございました。
Nivedita-san?
Hi.
Yeah, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was very interesting. The thing is, I could understand everything, but I'm not sure whether everybody would be able to understand. So what I would suggest is, when you
Yes.
present in Japanese, that's a very good initiative. But if you could have some slides corresponding in English, then the audience would be able to appreciate it better.
Yes.
Right?
時間がありませんでしたか
No,
ら。
no, I can understand definitely. Because next time you do this, you can plan it that way. So we get both the advantages. The presentation will be in Japanese, and the people will also be able to, even though they don't know the language, they'll still be able to understand and appreciate what you're talking about. Okay? So next time, please try that also. I'm
Yes.
just giving you a suggestion. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
It was very interesting. Actually, if people knew Japanese, that would have been very interesting for them, right? So there is one small thing. That is a gap. So you can fill it up next time.
Yeah,
Okay?
sure, Uma-san.
Yes, it will really work out well because your presentation is a very important presentation about etiquette. But that has to reach out to the audience, right? So
Yes.
we can parallelly have a slide with English so that people will be able to understand. Okay. Yeah.
Uma ma'am, if there are any questions that anyone would like to ask, they can do so.
Yeah, we can just open it to questions. Anybody, you're welcome, most welcome to come up with your questions. Anyone from the audience? I don't think we have seen any questions on the chat section, right?
No,
Till now?
They can orally ask also. If they
Good,
want,
very
they
good
can
comment,
unmute
but
their
not
mics and ask.
questions till now. So we just open it to the audience. Anybody, any questions? Any of the papers? Or if there is no question from the audience, we can even ask questions within our group. Yeah? Because each one has given a different presentation. For example, Preeti-san can ask something to Hima. Hima can ask Vignesh-san. Yeah? That's also possible. Right? Let's not keep waiting for questions. Let's start discussing something. That will make it good, lively, interesting. Yeah?
Actually, Hima's presentation was really good, but then I didn't have much idea about this fashion sense and all such things. But it was actually very interesting to learn so much. I didn't have any queries or such.
Yes.
Thank you, Preeti-san. Thank you.
So, the thing is, I do notice a lot of similarity between Tamil and Japanese. And today's presentation that from my classes as well. Is Tamil the only language which has so much of similarity to Japanese, or are there other languages as well which share a similarity to Japanese? And is there a particular reason as to, I mean, is there an Indian influence on Japanese? Is there something of that sort? Why is there so much of similarity? Is there something more
See,
to understand?
when you try to learn Japanese, out of my own experience, I can say I've been teaching students who speak Telugu, who speak Malayalam, any Indian language. So you can actually see a lot of similarity in the sentence structure, whole syntax of the sentence. And why we find such a lot of similarity? For example, you translate a Japanese, any Indian regional language. What happens is 95% of the sentence you get perfect. I will say only 95 because the remaining 5 is Japanese. With any other, there's a lot of noise, Walter-san.
Preeti ma'am, could you just mute your mic, ma'am? Yes.
Okay. So when you actually translate the sentence, you find a lot of similarity. 95% is the same structure, whereas a little bit, a 5% structure can be reserved for unique structures in Japanese. And we also have, if you, for example, you take the very simple expression, ittekimasu, poitu varen. We have an exact equivalent in Tamil. But let us think of this. There is a student who doesn't know Tamil or any Indian regional language. He speaks only English. How do you explain this ittekimasu to a person who speaks only English? I'll go and come back. That leads to a very interesting question. Why should I go and come back there? I can stay back here itself, right? Why should I go and come back? What is this going and coming back? So that question arises in most cases. The reason is this poitu vare expression exists in Tamil. It doesn't exist in English. See, there is a literal translation that you can do. I'll go and come back. That is okay. But that expression has to do not with the language, it's with the culture. Poitu varen. For example, even in our homes where we speak Tamil, if you say "நான் போறேன்," people, elderly people will immediately correct us. போறேன்னு சொல்லாத, போயிட்டு வரேன்னு சொல்லு. Say போயிட்டு வரேன். Don't say pore. Pore is only unidirectional. So it's like living forever. It's not like that. You have to keep coming back. We want you back. So poite vare is the expression, and that exists culturally, exists in Tamil. Whereas it doesn't exist in English. Only a literal translation is possible, which doesn't actually make sense in English. So this is the reason. So you have an exact comparison, and like Pritisa said, there is a particle. Even the particles, the minutest part of the language, there is an exact equivalent in Tamil. So word to word, particle to particle, you can relate, which is not possible in English. There are no particles in English which you can relate. Actually, particles are attached to the word, actually suffixed to the word. So what happens? There is no such suffix, there is no such particle in English. So where do these particles go? In the translation, they are not even found in the English translation. But they are only understood. They are not evident in the structure, in the sentence. So this is the main reason where we can compare Tamil or any Indian regional language with Japanese. Yes. And that makes learning a lot easier, because you would have found that in our own classes, right? When you learn Japanese, you really associate, and you come out even without much of guidance, you can still arrive at a perfect sentence by yourself. Put a little bit of effort, you get it. That's how it is. Yes. And in that process, I have started learning Telugu, Kannada, and all the Indian languages from my students, because I take an effort. See, how do you say this sentence? I'll give them the meaning in English. How do you say this in your language? Tell me how you say that in Telugu. I don't speak Telugu. I don't know Telugu. But I have a sense of getting the correct sentence. I ask him to give me 4 or 5 ways of translating that sentence in Telugu. But I know which one matches. Somehow, I don't know how it is possible, but somehow the sense helps me to understand which one is the best matching equivalent. So that really helps me, and I have also ended up learning Telugu, Kannada, and all these languages because of that. So it is actually Telugu through Japanese and Kannada through Japanese. It's like that for me. It's a very interesting experience. Yes.
Good evening, ma'am. I have a question.
Yeah. May I know who
Yes,
this
sir.
is? May I know who this is?
I am Madhura Bashni,
Yeah.
one of the student of SRM University. I'm doing my
Okay.
second year BA English there. Hajimemashite, watashi wa Madhura Bashni desu. 1年から日本語を勉強しています。
Okay.
So my real question is that do you have any tips for effective communication in Japanese, ma'am? Like something we should remember when communicating to talk fluently.
Yeah. See, when you communicate, it's not only the language. There are a lot of expressions which you need to use when you communicate. For example, there is something called aisatsu. Definitely you will know that, right? Aisatsu is very important. Aisatsu, it relates to different situations and what are you supposed to say. For example, before you start a meal, what are you supposed to say? After you finish a meal, what are you supposed to say? When somebody thanks you, how will you respond? And not all aisatsu have responses. For example, when you say thank you, you have a response like you're welcome, no mention, like that. But not all aisatsu have a response. Some aisatsu are unidirectional. You just say that, that's it. For example, you say excuse me, you say sorry. That doesn't call for a response. But saying sorry, saying thank you is an indispensable part of Japanese. So, will we just stop with one thank you or one sorry? They say at least 10 times because they think it is very essential. And I have had many students, Japanese people who learn English from me. So they have been asking me this question, Umasa, I find one thing which is very striking when I reach Chennai or even India or Tamil Nadu, any place in India, you don't seem to be using sorry and thank you so much. You just stop. Very rarely I hear that. And even if I happen to hear that, luckily, it is only once. Why do you stop with just one thank you or one sorry? It is really important you express your sorry or thank you so much. At least 5 or 6 times you have to repeat that. But I'm really surprised why they use it very less. At the same time, we'll be so surprised. Why do they keep on saying thank you understand sorry so much. It's a difference in culture, right? But that is the importance they give to sorry and thank you. Two small words, small expressions, but that is the level of importance they give to it. So, Aisatsu is a very important part of the language. And like we discussed in today's session, these onomatopoeia and lot of, if you talk to elderly people, you will see that they use a lot of proverbs. Everyday situations, they use a lot of proverbs, and the proverbs are apt. They are so appropriate to the situation, so that you will really wonder what it means. Some idiomatic expressions are also there. For example, you say, I can give you an example. What shall I say? These idiomatic expressions, literally, you can translate them, but that will not give you the actual meaning. Okay. Say, for example, what can I tell you? The literal translation is different and the actual meaning is different. Preeti-san, can you think of some example? Some idiomatic expression which you have learned?
Idiomatic expressions, I don't
Literal
exactly remember.
translation.
Maybe, like I said, idiophonic words, I could just remember.
See, for example, if you want to hate someone, okay, if you want to hate someone, you lend a hand. The distance, right? Lend a hand. Lend a hand means what? Help. Well, we have kai kudukurathu. Kai kudukurathu doesn't mean put your hand on that person. It's not like that. That's the literal translation. You lend kai kudukkurathu. Okay? These are it. These kind of idiomatic expressions exist in all languages. So, this is a lot in communication. These learning proverbs and also learning your Aisatsu, which is that will definitely help communicate very well. It makes the language elegant, it makes it very colorful, it makes the expression rich. That is important while communicating.
Hi,
Have I answered
wakarimashita.
your questions, huh? Yes.
Domo arigatou gozaimasu, sensei.
Don't touch me. Yes.
Uma-san, shall we go ahead to the formal vote of thanks? We are running out of time.
Yeah, sure. I think it has covered everything. We also had a question and answer session. I think definitely we can go to the board of thanks session. Yes.
It gives me a great pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for this Japanese session. It has been a very incredible and a unique session and part of this conference, and it is all due to Uma ma'am, who was with us right from the beginning, right from the conception of this particular initiative, and we wanted Japanese to be part of this conference. And Uma Balu ma'am has been with us right from the start, helping us and supporting us and guiding us. And I have to say that I'm wholeheartedly grateful to you, ma'am, for your support and for being there and moderating the session and being our session chair. I thank all the participants who presented papers, Hema ma'am, Mr. Vignesh, Preeti ma'am, and Nivedita ma'am, who have shared their knowledge and their experience in Japanese with us. I also take this time to extend a warm welcome, a warm thank you to my colleagues, Bharati and Geetanjali, who have hosted this session. And we have, I think, made this a very successful one. Thank you so much, one and all.
Yes.
And
So it's been a very
Mama,
effective session.
I would
Yes.
like to declare this Japanese session closed.
Yes. Been very interactive session and very interesting presentations. And hope next time we'll have more papers coming in And yes, so that the audience can also enjoy, even though they don't know the language, they can, as I requested to Nivedita san, if we present the paper in Japanese, we can request them to have the slides in English, so that the audience will be completely attended to, right? So thank you so much, every
Thank you so
participant. Thank you so much. You did a wonderful job. Make the session so lively, so interesting. Thank you so much. Domo arigato.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Bharati, we can end the session, Bharati.
Yes.
Walter?
We can end the session, Bharati.
Okay, Walter. Thank you.